Welcome to everyone around the world. I'm going to have a very interesting stream for everybody here today. I've read some of these verses before in a previous stream, but this one kind of has different angle, different approach, and I think a few more very interesting verses. So I think it warrants a new stream. I'm going to try and do a different format for this stream so I don't yabber so much, and I'll try to plow through the verses quicker. Okay, so let's see how that goes. I'll Now and then I might adjust the music if I think it's too high or whatever, too low. So, like the title says, this is about amazing verses that prove that not only there's an inner earth, but that it's inhabited with people and beings and giants. Okay? So, let's start off with a really powerful one that I don't. No, I'm pretty sure I did not have this in my older stream. This is from Psalm 139. Turn it down a bit. Psalm 139, verse 15. It says, "My substance was not hid from thee, O God, when I was made in secret, curiously wrought in the lower part of the earth." Okay, this is obviously being spoken of figuratively, but that's besides the point. He's identifying a place, the lower part of the earth. Okay? Now, that by itself isn't all that intriguing until you combine it with all these other verses here. I'll read this one first. In Psalm 63, starting from verse 8, it says, "Cleaved has my soul after thee, on me has thy right hand taken hold, and they who for desolation seek my soul go in to the lower parts of the earth." So the enemies of this particular biblical, whoever he was, patriarch, the enemies are going into the lower parts of the earth. Now, what does that tell you? Okay? Thank you. All right? Now, combine that also with the following verses. From Isaiah 44, verse 23, it says, "Sing, O heavens, for Jehovah has wrought. Shout, O lower parts of earth. Break forth, O mountains, with singing, forest and every tree in it. For Jehovah has redeemed Jacob, and in Israel he does beautify himself." Shout, O lower parts of the earth. And this is where it gets really, really interesting here. Now, before I read these following mega verses, I'm going to read this to me, this is a famous verse, because I always say it. It's like the golden verse for me. In Isaiah 24, I'll start at verse 20. This is talking about a time in the past, in ancient times, okay? When all the bad guys, people and the fallen angels, the mighty bad guys, the lowly bad guys, they're all gathered up and imprisoned to each their own in the prison realms, okay? Whether it be the pit for some, whether it be the underworld for others, right? To each their own. So it says here, "And God also made the earth move." It was probably a time of pole shift, right? Check this out. Verse 20. "Stagger greatly does the land as a drunkard, and it has been moved as a lodge. And heavy on it has been its transgression, and it has fallen and addeth not to rise. And it has come to pass in that day, Jehovah layeth a charge on the host of the high place, in the high place, and on the kings of the land, on the land. And they have been gathered, a gathering of bound ones in a pit, and shut up they have been in a prison, and after a multitude of days are inspected. And confounded has been the moon, and ashamed has been the sun. For reigned has Jehovah of hosts in Mount Zion and in Jerusalem, and over against his elders honor." This is the same prophecy, essentially, that Enoch gave, okay? That after 70 generations, all right, what's going to happen? The chiefs and their minions are going to be released from the pit. And it says, "A gathering of bound ones in a pit, and shut up they have been in a prison, and after a multitude of days," the 70 generations, are in, well, this might be a different time period, but at the end of the time period, they are inspected, which means they are let out. Okay? Now keep that powerful golden verse in mind when we read the following ones from Ezekiel and elsewhere. In Ezekiel 26, verse 19, it says, "For thus said the Lord Jehovah, in my making thee a city wasted, like cities that have not been inhabited, in bringing up against thee the deep, then covered thee have the great waters. And I have caused thee to go down with those going down to the pit, unto the people of old. And I have caused thee to dwell in the land, the lower parts, in wastes of old, with those going down to the pit, so that thou art not inhabited, and I have given beauty in the land of the living. Waste I do make thee, and thou art not, and thou art sought, and art not found any more, to the age and affirmation of the Lord Jehovah." If I'm not mistaken, this was the chapter talking about the Babylonians. Let me scroll up. Yep. In verse 7 it says, "For thus said the Lord Jehovah, lo, I am bringing in unto Tyre Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon from the north, a king of kings with horse and chariot," and blah, blah, blah. "And thy daughters in the field by sword he slayeth." So it's talking about Nebuchadnezzar taking over. And it's been like 15 years since I went through the order of the biblical beasts. If I'm not mistaken, the Babylonians took over Medes and Persia, or vice versa, one of the two. In either case, right, it's immaterial for what we're talking about here. So it's talking about Babylon. So whoever actually, it would be interesting to find out who he's taking over. But whoever he's taking over, that nation of peoples were sent down into the lower parts of the earth. Okay, that is some pretty intense stuff there. And let's go look at the words that were used there. "I have caused thee to dwell in the land, the lower parts, in wastes of old, unto the people of old." That means there's ancient peoples down there, right? Thank you. And it says, "People are looking for you on the surface. Thou art sought and art not found anymore." Why? Because you've been taken away from the surface world, right? Where God has given beauty to the land of the living. You've been brought down to the depths. So moving on, another shocking verse. This one even more shocking in my opinion. From Ezekiel. Actually, you know what? I'm going to read Isaiah 14 first. This is talking about the king of Tyre, if I'm not mistaken. But whoever's talking about it's another earthly king, okay, who's working for the devil, right? And people think this is talking about Satan being cast down from heaven. Read the chapter. Okay, let me remember. This is verse 11. Let me go up and prove to people, because I always teach this, right? In Isaiah 14, it says in verse 4, "That thou hast taken up this simile concerning the king of Babylon," okay, and said, "How is the exactor ceased?" Okay, it's talking about the king of Babylon. Right? It's not, some Bible translations render it Tyre, okay, but the original apparently says Babylon. All right, so it's not talking about Satan, and the Bible never anywhere calls Satan Lucifer ever. This is the only instance, and because of the Catholic Church and whatever, right? People have over the ages just called Satan Lucifer when that's not actually biblically what his name was. Okay, the fact that Satanists and Illuminati or whatever, they worship Lucifer is besides the point. They've just adopted that cultural name because Christians, who are their opponents, believe Lucifer is the devil. So they've adopted that devilish name. You see what I mean? They got lots of names for the devil. All right, but anyways, I just want to point that out, right? It's about the king of Babylon. Let's go back down to verse 11, and let's listen to what it says here. It says, "Brought down to Sheol," which is the underworld. I covered that aspect better in the older stream where I bring up a lot of these verses, right? I can't remember what the stream was called. Something about giants and underground, maybe giants in the end days, whatever it might be. Okay, but I covered some more verses on Sheol. Sheol is not the land of the dead and stuff like that there. Sheol is literally the underworld. Okay, it's different from the pit itself. The pit is the bottomless pit. And hell is a different thing altogether as well, right? Sheol is a physical place within our earth, right? So it says here in verse 11, brought down to Sheol has been thine excellency. This is talking about the Babylonian king, remember, which a lot of Christians think they're talking about. It's talking about Lucifer, right? Brought down to Sheol, the underworld, has been thine excellency. The noise of thy psaltery. Under thee spread out has been the worm. Yea, covering thee is the worm. How hast thou fallen from the heavens, O shining one, son of the dawn? Thou hast been cut down to the earth, O weakener of nations. And thou said in thy heart, the heavens I go up, above stars of God I raise my throne, and I sit in the mount of meeting in the sides of the north. I go up above the heights of a thick cloud, I am like to the Most High. Only unto Sheol thou art brought down, unto the sides of the pit. Yeah, that also shows you the pit is not Sheol. It's logical. The pit is bottomless. It's an abyss. Okay? And Sheol is the underworld. Okay, but the pit, we know from Revelations 9, when there's going to be some entrance to the pit that's going to connect the surface world to whatever is within, wherever the pit might be. You know what I mean? Maybe it's in a different dimension, who knows, but Revelations 9, the angel that comes down is going to open up the surface of the earth, and somehow it's going to connect to the pit, and whatever's in the pit is going to come out. Okay? It also could be that, there is an abyss, like a dimensional abyss, that the worst demons and beings go to, and they can never escape. It's like a dimensional Rubik's Cube. It's just a void, an abyss of nothingness. They can't do anything or go anywhere, right? But the area within the earth, maybe just for Revelations 9, it's being symbolically called the pit. I don't know, right? But nonetheless, check this out here. It says, only unto Sheol thou art brought down, unto the sides of the pit. Thy beholders look to thee they attend. Thy beholders. If he's being removed from the land of the living, being brought down here, which we know from so many other verses is an inhabited place, this is who the the beholders are. Thy beholders look to thee they attend. Is this the man causing the earth to tremble, shaking kingdoms? He has made the world as a wilderness, and his cities he has broken down. Of his bound ones he opened not the house. He opened not the house. O kings of nations, all of them have lain down in honor, each in his house. And thou hast been cast out of... Yep, that's right. And thou hast been cast out of thy grave, as an abominable branch, remnant of the slain, thrust through ones of the sword, going down unto the sons of the pit, as a carcass trodden down. I think that's pretty much it. I probably read a little bit too much there. You know what? I'm a real dingbat, I started at the wrong verse. I knew I was missing something out of here that was important. Should have started further up. So, let's start from verse 9 this time. It's still talking about the same king coming down, right? It says, Sheol beneath. Sheol beneath, right? Wouldn't that have been better if I had actually started from the proper verse, right? Sheol beneath has been troubled at thee to meet thy coming in. It is waking up for thee, Rephaim, all chief ones of earth. It is raised up from their thrones, all kings of nations. All of them answer and say unto thee, they're living, they see him, they answer him. Even thou hast become weak like us. Unto us thou hast become like. Because all these beings that are cast down here to these, prison places inside there. There's wonderful places down inside there too, right? In the inner earth regions. The ones in the prison regions, they've been made weak, right? They've been restricted. They've been bound here. They're being punished. They don't like that, right? And continuing is where I started before in verse 11. Brought down to Sheol has been thine excellency. So what did this powerful verse reveal to us? Again, Sheol is the underworld. It's beneath. It's inhabited with living beings. In fact, it's saying that down there are the Rephaim. Okay, and like I covered in that previous stream, the Rephaim, there's no argument here. I could pull up the verses now, but if I keep pulling up verses, it's going to freeze my computer. So I've got like 20 windows open, right? I'll prove it once I start closing some windows. The Rephaim are the giants. Specifically, the Rephaim also include the Titans, the most massive giants. Okay, when it talks about the Anakim, it literally says that another name for Anakim is Rephaim. Okay, King Og was reckoned as Rephaim, and if I'm not mistaken, even Goliath was reckoned as Rephaim. So from the smallest giants to the absolute biggest giants, Rephaim. So when it says here that beneath thee in the underworld there are the Rephaim, okay, all chief ones of earth. It is raised up from their thrones, all kings of nations. And what's the buzz? The buzz behind the curtain says that, in buzz, 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 the buzz behind the curtain says that the Illuminati secretly work for those secret chiefs that are down there. I'll throw out a little bit more buzz, buzz from behind the curtain. Adolf Hitler was terribly petrified of these beings down there, okay? The Supermen, he called them. And he knew that they were going to come out to the surface. That's all I'm going to say on that one. And they were called by him and the other Illuminati. The term for them is secret chiefs. Okay? Secret chiefs. And the Bible says the Rephaim, all chiefs, chief ones of earth, is raised up from their thrones. All kings of nations. What does that tell you, folks? That the ones down there are the ones ruling up here. Okay? So, looks like the buzz was correct. So, let's move on to Ezekiel. Did I read this one there? Yeah. Let's move on to Ezekiel 31, because I think I read 36. Did I read Ezekiel 26? Yeah, I did. I did read Ezekiel 26. Let me close that. Close Isaiah 44, Psalm 63, Psalm 139. Okay, so in Ezekiel 31, it's talking about, in this chapter, if I'm not mistaken, it's talking about the Assyrians. And I got to start from verse 14. Yeah. It's talking about how the Assyrians were so massive. They were the tallest trees of Eden. And it's talking about the trees of Eden represent people, right? Or races, tribes, people, right? The Assyrians were the tallest, taller than the cedars. The cedar trees grow like 200 feet. Okay? And, I've always suspected God symbolized the different peoples with different tree names because of how big or how broad they got. Like, the Bashan giants were compared to the oaks, so they were called the oaks of Bashan, right? Oak trees are extremely thick and powerful. King Og wasn't the tallest giant, but he was very thick and powerful, right? So that's just my opinion. But anyway, starting from verse 14, right? I just want to point that out. It's talking about the Assyrians. He says we're the tallest trees of the field and all that. It's not just talking about, stature. It's also talking about physical stature. So, it says in verse 14, in order that none of the trees of the waters may become haughty because of their stature, nor give their foliage between thickets, nor any drinking water stand up unto them in their haughtiness, for all of them are given up to death unto the earth, the lower part, in the midst of the sons of men, unto those going down to the pit. And if you think where it says given up to death and this and that there, that means, it's symbolizing that they're dead and they're buried in the ground. That's the primitive way of thinking that Satan has used to blind the churches for millennia. Okay? That's not the case. There is a verse, and me open a separate window and get this ready because I will forget otherwise. There is a verse where God sends people alive down there. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've already read verses where it makes it quite clear there are living ones down there. Okay, but I'm just going to open this up and just type in alive in pit because that way I can't forget. Okay, so I've got that ready for later. So let's go back and read this, right? All of them given up to death. What happened with Adam? It said, Adam, you will surely die when you eat that apple. But what did the devil tell Adam? Oh, you're not going to die, like right away. You know what I mean? So when it says here, they're given up to death, it doesn't mean you're going to get, you're killed right then, there, and you're buried and all that symbolic. No, that's not what it is. You're given up to death as your punishment, and you're being sent unto the earth, the lower part, in the midst of the sons of men. into the midst of the sons of men. I mean, that directly there tells you that the Son of Men are down within the lower part of the earth, right? Unto those going down to the pit. You know, the lower you go in the prison realms, the closer you're getting to pit level status. You see what I mean? The worst of the worst go to the pit. That's why Satan is imprisoned in the pit and comes out to kill the two witnesses, right? And go off and fight Jesus. That's for the worst of the worst. So, in continuing in verse 15, it says, "Thus said the Lord Jehovah, in the day of his going down to Sheol," this is the Assyrians, remember, okay? "In the day of his going down to Sheol, the underworld, I have caused mourning, I have covered for him the deep, and diminished its flowings, and restrained our many waters." Doesn't this sound, if people are watching now that watched one of my most recent streams that I did about the Euphrates being dried up and stuff like that there, I wish I had this verse ready here, because it was taught about the second Ezra prophecies of the end times and the inner earth, right? Perfect connection here, right? Thank you. Okay, I was talking about the wonderful verses from Second Ezra and from Revelations and wherever else, right, where it talks about that the Euphrates River is dried up, okay, and that these lost tribes went through the narrow passages once it was dried up to an unknown, distant land, blah, blah, blah. Okay, watch that stream to get all that info, right? Right here, God has said, "I have covered for him the deep and diminished its flowings and restrained our many waters. And I make Lebanon black for him." Like, I'm pretty sure, I'm not a geography map, right? But Lebanon is basically in the same area. I mean, that says enough for me. When God talks about sending people down into the earth and restraining waters, I'm sorry, but that connects perfectly with all the other verses from that other stream, right? So, not only did the lost 10 tribes go down into those regions, down into the inner earth, that's probably one of the entrance ways. Okay, he also cast the Assyrians down there. It doesn't say Euphrates here. There might be another place where he restrains waters. But going by what we know, it probably is the Euphrates that he's talking about here, right? Just out of interest, let me type in Euphrates and let's see if it goes through Lebanon. Just out of interest. It doesn't disprove anything, right? But let's check it out. Euphrates, Lebanon. It says Euphrates originates in eastern Turkey, wherever that is. I kind of know where that is. And then it flows through Syria and Iraq to join the Tigris, which empties into the Persian Gulf. Yeah, so is Lebanon even a country? I don't even know. It's not listed as a... Let's do a little bit more learning here. Lebanon. Let me take a few seconds. Lebanon, is that a country or a city? It is a country. It is really close. You know what I could do? Distance from Lebanon to Euphrates. If it's close to the Euphrates, I mean, that would be pretty cool. Okay, no. So Lebanon's kind of like near that little body of water by Damascus. If it's the Mediterranean or whatever it is. There's some body of water on the corner of the map here. Maybe it's Galilee Sea or something, right? And it is a little ways away, so... yeah. But, whatever. A little sidetrack, but it's always good to learn stuff. So let's go back to the verse. Okay, restrained are many waters, and I make Lebanon black for him, and all trees for the field have been covered for him. Yeah, I guess it doesn't have to be even tied to Lebanon. And I make Lebanon black, this is him rendering punishment on Lebanon, right? But anyways, it says, from the sound of his fall, going down into Sheol, right, I have caused nations to shake in my causing him to go down to Sheol, with those going down to the pit, and comforted in the earth, the lower part, are all trees of Eden, the choice and the good of Lebanon, all drinking waters. That's interesting. I never even thought about this before. This kind of sounds like, we know that, like, say we got the Mystery Babylon in Revelations and Babylon in the Old Testament. I did miss that comment that popped up. Once they pop up, they disappear. So I don't know who said anything or what. Um, but the next time it pops up, I got like 3 seconds to look at it before it fades away. So if you want to type whatever it was again, if it was important, I'll try to catch it the next time. I'll be super diligent. Okay. Um, and I apologize for missing it there. Oh, here we go. Oh, hey there, Dustin. How you doing? Yeah. So yeah, it kind of makes it sound like so. Yeah, like I was saying, we have the mystery Babylon and Revelations. We have Babylon in the Old Testament. My point in saying that is that we know that sometimes these nations, their names can be used. Say it says the lower part are all trees of Eden, the choice and the good of Lebanon. So the Lebanese, you know, what I mean, but the trees of Lebanon are down in there. That's pretty interesting. So in a sense, Lebanon is connected to the inner earth. If you see what I mean. And continuing in verse 17, and they with him have gone down to Sheol, unto the pierced of the sword, and his arm they dwelt in his shade in the midst of nations. Unto whom hast thou been thus like in honor and in greatness among the trees of Eden? And thou hast been brought down with the trees of Eden unto the earth, the lower part, in the midst of the uncircumcised. Now think about it here. Like if God was saying, I'm going to destroy your nation, he's used words to cover that meaning like throughout the Bible. We're having paragraphs here that are unparalleled throughout the Bible. Like you won't find stuff like this written anywhere else, right? You know, I did a little bit of homework here to gather these verses up. There aren't that many in the Bible, okay? So this is something unusual. So for people to claim, oh, it just means he's been put to death and he's buried in the ground, because that's what churches have always said. That doesn't slide for me. You see what I mean? It doesn't slide. This is clearly saying that there are ancient peoples, that there are sons of man, that there are Rephaim, okay, all down within the earth, in the lower parts, right? That is clearly what it's saying. I mean, this earth itself, I mean, all of us, we're in the land of the dead. This is the world, everything on this planet dies, even the plants and the insects. All forms of life, from the lowest to the highest, we die. This is the world of death, if you ask me, right? But who goes down to the cursed regions? But those who have been pierced by the sword of God, right? Those who have been judged by him, right? His tongue is the sword, right? That cuts the soul asunder and judges it like a two-edged sword. So just because it throws in one or two figurative descriptive lines saying like pierced of the sword, or you know what I mean, that does not take away from the fact of everything else that's being said here, which is unique to the whole Bible. You see what I mean? And I know that sounds very laboriously explained, but you know, I'm not a perfect speaker. I'm just a regular person, but I try to convey things properly. But this verse here is incredible as well, from Ezekiel 32. It says, Son of man, wail for the multitude of Egypt, and cause it to go down. To go down. Now, if God is talking about destroying a nation, why doesn't he just use the typical common sense and otherwise biblical terminology that he's always used? Why is he suddenly saying here, I'm going to make these bad guys go down, right? It says, I cause it to go down, it, and the daughters of honorable nations unto the earth, the lower parts, with those going down to the pit. Then whom has, man, that's worded complicatedly. Then whom hast thou been more pleasant? Go down and be laid with the uncircumcised. So down there are the uncircumcised and the pierced of the sword. Now stop and think about this. That doesn't mean pierced of the sword. You could say, oh, that means those have been put to death. You can't say that about the uncircumcised. Do you see my point? So when it talks about, you know, this is the land of the dead in a few places, or it's the land of the pierced by the sword. Oh, cool. Thanks, Chad. Right? It doesn't prove that it's the land of, that it's symbolizing death. You see what I mean? They have lain with the uncircumcised. Who are the uncircumcised? Jesus told us in the New Testament, right, that the true circumcision isn't of your ding-a-ling, it's of your whole body, right? I mean, yeah, that circumcision for your private parts is a real thing that was commanded, yes, true, right? But Jesus says in whatever verse it was, I don't have time to bring that up as well, I've covered it in some stream I've done, where he says it's the circumcision of the body, putting off of the flesh, right? And I believe the verse goes something like, it's the baptism isn't about putting away the filth of the flesh. It's not about washing dirt off your body. It's about essentially washing the flesh off your body, if you see what I mean, symbolically speaking. Okay, so you're putting off that old self that you had and crucifying your old self at the baptism, because when we are baptized, it says that we die with Christ. And then we are risen with him. That's why you're reborn from the baptism, right? So those who are uncircumcised, who are the uncircumcised throughout the Bible? They're the heathens, right? Those who reject God. So if you haven't circumcised your body, that's what it's talking about, right? It's not those who haven't had their dingling circumcised that are down there, clearly, obviously. So it's talking about the bad guys, long story short, okay? And those who have been judged by God, when it says the pierced of the sword. And yeah, those who were killed by the sword of God. But God never came down to earth with a sword like King Arthur swung it around and killed giants, you know what I mean? So you can't even take it literally anyways. But anyways, it says that down there in verse 22, there is Ashur and all her assembly round about him are his graves. All of them are wounded, who are falling by sword, whose graves are appointed in the sides of the pit, and her assembly is round about her grave. All of them wounded, falling by sword, because they gave terror in the land of the living. Again, we see reference like the giants and all of them caused terror on the surface. And this is why, like every culture, I mean, no matter how you look, the Greeks, you had Zeus fighting off the giants and the Titans. There's something I read at the end here about Typhon as well, right? He was the king of all the Titans and the evil Titans and monsters, right? And that's going to be pretty interesting. A possible link to Abaddon of the pit, right? Because that's where Typhon was cast down there. But like in Greek mythology, for example, you had some good giants who helped mankind. You had these big bad giants, usually more mutant, monster-looking, hideous ones, and like the good giants and whatever, like the good gods, whatever you want to call them, right? The celestial beings, they would come like Zeus, and he would fight off these giants. And where did they imprison them? But Tartarus, like that's the literal name they use for it, Tartarus, which is in Jude and Second Peter, right? The fallen angels were imprisoned in Tartarus, and kind of went off track there, but let me get back to the verse because I said I would stop waffling so much for this one here. Oh, the terror in the land of the living, right? They caused pure terror on the earth. Typhon especially, he embodied terror and utter destruction. Which is probably why he is Abaddon, which means king of destruction. Typhon was the worst of all the evil giants and the most destructive of all the evil giants. And down there they die. If you're going down into a lower realm, right? And I've got verses from the New Testament that prove the two sides of this. There's a spiritual realm down there and a physical realm, just like up here on the surface, right? Best way to explain is two sides of one coin. Okay, it is just one coin. One side is physical, one side is non-physical, but they're one coin. So all around you right now is the non-physical as well as the physical that you see. That's why ghosts, demons, spirits are all around you. You can't usually see them, right? But they can somehow interact. They go through physical objects. They defy time, space, and matter, the constraints of three-dimensional reality, which is realm-based, right? So, and that's the reason why. So, as above, so below. So, we got that up here. It's the same down there. When you go down into the lower regions, yeah, there's physical realm, right? Just like here, we got physical beings, right? But all around them, likewise, is the spiritual as well. Okay? So, I don't want to spoil the verses by reading them ahead of time, but we know that when Jesus died, he went down there. Like I said, I don't want to spoil it. Let me get to that later, right? I'll tie it all in because it's a few verses away. So basically down there, you can be alive and still die. You see what I mean? Or you can die and be sent down there to the hell. Okay? To the lower prison realms. And both of those cases are real. Now, in verse 24, it says there is Elam, another nation sent. So we got Babylonians, we got Egyptians, we've got Assyrians, all the big bad guys from the Bible, nations of people being sent down here, right? How many times have I said for years now on YouTube that the tribes of Gog and Magog are not necessarily going to just be surface peoples? I highly doubt there's going to be any surface peoples. Everybody says China, Russia. You're all being distracted. You're looking over here when the enemy's going to come from over there. Okay, it's going to happen wham in an instant. The world's going to go dark, and that's when they're all going to come out. Okay, read Revelations 9. It's not just my prophetic dream, it is Revelations 9. The angel opens up the pit, okay, the whole earth goes dark. Bam. Okay, that's when they come out. That's when the locusts come out. And also read Joel, like I always say. Okay, so anyways, let's continue. There is Elam and all her multitude, and all her multitude, all her multitude. Round about is her grave, all of them wounded, who are falling by sword, who have gone down uncircumcised unto the earth, the lower parts, because they gave their terror in the land of the living, and they bear their shame with those going down to the pit. I mean, there's a lot of allusion to life down here, not purely death. Okay, we're talking about, where is it? They're bearing shame down there. Okay, they're wounded down there. You see what I mean? But going on in verse 25, in the midst of the wounded, they have appointed a bed for her with all her multitude. And also when you're dead, you return to dust, right? How is that a multitude if you're dust, right? So with all her multitude, round about him are her graves. All of them uncircumcised, pierced of the sword, for their terror was given in the land of the living, and they bear their shame with those going down to the pit. In the midst of the pierced, he has been put. There is Meshesh, Tubal, and all her multitude. Round about him are her graves, all of them uncircumcised, pierced of the sword, for they gave terror in the land of the living. And they lie not with the mighty who are falling of the uncircumcised, who have gone down to Sheol with their weapons of war. And they put their swords under their heads, and their iniquities are on their bones. For the terror of the mighty is in the land of the living. And lower down, there is Edom. Wow. Wow. So that's where all the Edomites went. The descendants of Esau. The race that we don't see on the surface. A race that's red and hairy all over, right? There is Edom and her kings, and all her princes, who have been given up in their might with the pierce of the sword. They with the uncircumcised do lie, and with those going down to the pit. And there are princes of the north. I mean, it goes on. Wow. So that's Ezekiel 32. Now let's look at Ephesians verse 4. And let me read this verse here also before I forget, because this is going to be very important. In Proverbs 1 verse 12, this will kind of settle the score. Not kind of, it will. It says, we swallow them as Sheol, alive and whole, as those going down to the pit. Right? We swallow them as Sheol, the underworld, alive and whole, as those, like those, going down to the pit. Oh, Jade Helm. Have you watched my it's funny you mentioned that. Have you watched my Giant, I'm just trying to think of the title. Giants Are Coming with the movie clips video, where I mentioned I had a bunch of videos where I showed like the maps of Jade Helm and how they literally were over all the cavern systems of America. I got a cavern map, which is called a karst map, Karst, right? Karst systems are cave systems. Cave systems form in sedimentary rock like limestone, right? You look at a map of North America, right? And you look at where all the cave systems are on the map, and then you overlay the map of Jade Helm and where it operates, it's all in the exact same blinking places. And you go look at a map of where all the underground cities and military bases are, bam, bam, bam. All in the same spots, right? That is not a coincidence. And Jade Helm's slogan was Master the Human Domain. Master the Human Domain. Seriously, man? Like, I thought that was fake. But that's really what their slogan was. Master the Human Domain. And why would they say that? Because, like I said in those videos, they know that the giants and all them are coming out, like Native American prophecy says, and they're getting ready. That's what Jade Helm was a practice for, in my opinion. I mean, Russia and China, what are they going to do? Like, airdrop tanks into the middle of America? Like, they're going to airdrop tanks in Florida and Texas or wherever else they had it? No, they're not. So why are you practicing a huge military drill, bringing miles and miles worth of equipment and all that there to all throughout America? Like, if you're going to be invaded, it's going to happen from the sea. I mean, this ain't 1940. What are you going to have, battleships coming up to New York and Florida and bombing Disneyland and New York City? Like, come on. It's not going to happen. Uh, Wars today are fought differently. Like, we have wars in the, they have wars in the Middle East with tanks and stuff because that's a more, not being insulting, but a more undeveloped, let's choose a nicer word, more undeveloped place, right? So in America is a developed place. You're not going to have tank war and stuff like. So why do they got all the tanks with massive 50 caliber guns on them? Anyways, I love that topic there, right? So swallow them as Sheol, the underworld, alive and whole, as those going down to the pit. So that proves, like what I said before, the pit is probably a term, and it is just a word, the pit, right? So the pit could be dual. It could have dual symbolism. It could actually mean the bottomless abyss, right? For the worst and most powerful demons like Satan. But it could also refer to the prison region within the earth as well. And the entrance to the abysmal pit might be within that pit prison region. Do you see what I mean? That's what it seems to be like, what I just said there, from everything I've read in the Bible. Okay? And there's I'm pretty sure there's other verses where it says that people were taken alive down within the earth. But I'm going to try and cut the stream down a little bit. I think I read those in the previous one I made. You know, that was the search I had ready from earlier. I said I would put this search in case I forgot it. And the search was for the words alive and pit. So let's see. Yeah, it was Proverbs 1:12, so I did have the right one up. But I mean, now I remember it. Thank you, Lord. Thank you, Lord. Check this out. For those of you who haven't heard this verse before, this is gonna blow your hat off. Okay. In Job 26, verse 5, it says, "The Rephaim are formed beneath the waters, also their inhabitants." The Rephaim are formed beneath the waters. The Rephaim are giants. Okay? It's not the word for dead people. This is what I mean. The Bible's full of dual symbolism for words. It's just like how the Hebrew language works. To Galatians. I could check that after. I'll check that once I've done this, because otherwise in my train of thought I'll forget what I was going to say. But I'll remember Galatians. I'll check that in a sec. Also, give me the verse number specifically too. Offhand, I don't know what you're talking about in Galatians. But yeah, the Rephaim are formed beneath the waters. Like, we know that the oceans only go down a few miles, right? There's the Earth. I found it the other day. I finally found out the crust is like 800 miles thick. It's way more than I thought it was. 800 miles thick, where you could have huge regions. Okay, huge regions. I don't know how high our ionosphere or atmosphere is. I don't know if it's 800 miles. Is it? I don't know. I don't think so. I don't know. But come on, 800 miles, that's a huge, huge amount of space. Okay, and under the lakes, under the oceans, these giant areas, water runs downward, right? They just proved in science that there are bigger oceans under the surface oceans, which proves my point. Okay, if I had claimed something like that 5 or 10 years ago, everybody would be looking at me like I'm a wacko. There's oceans under the oceans, and yeah, and these lower oceans are bigger. I'd be like, cuckoo, right? But the scientists proved it. And the Bible, in one of the verses I just read, it's talking about I will cover them with the deep, right? So God is putting waters on top of these beings. Why? Probably to help keep them separate from the surface. They cause terror in the land of the living, so they're being brought down to here. And also, like the Egyptians, the Assyrians, and all of them, you know, over time they probably interbred. The giant ones interbred with people. Oh, you remember my old channel? Oh, cool. Oh, nice. That's nice to know, man. Because I made that little video earlier today, my 10-minute video about lamenting on the loss of my old channel and all that. That was dark forces having a hand in that there. And I do have to be quiet about that and bite my tongue because yeah, the emails and the basically a threat. I mean, it's not like a threat of violence, but legal threat and mention of lawyers and like what? Like that's all I'm gonna say. So that's all I'm gonna say. Trouble, trouble. And why? I don't know. What the heck did I do? I had no violations, nothing. But anyways. So yeah, the Rephaim are formed beneath the water. So just some quick proof for people, even though I've done it before, right? Let's do a quick search for Rephaim and Anakim. In Deuteronomy 2:11 it says, Rephaim they are reckoned, they also as the Anakim, and the Moabites call them Emim. So the Rephaim is another name for the Anakim. And who are the Anakim? But the ones that were so huge it made the Israelites look like grasshoppers. Yeah, the Native American elders know where all the entrances are. Different tribes are designated to protect different entrances, and they're super, super secret. But a few of them, I've seen some shows and stuff where like the elder comes out and says where the entrance is, and they say, "Look, oh, it's the end times now, so these things are going to start happening anyway." So it's basically too late to do anything about it. But yeah, that's why they're always so protective about their sacred spots and sacred land, and so secretive about it because they know where the entrances are. And they always say, even though I feel it's prejudice, they always say like, oh, if the white man, if they took their racism out of what they say and at least put it in a different perspective, it would be a little bit more nicer. But the way they say it is, oh, if the white man, let's just say West, no, I don't even like using the term Westerner, you know what I mean? That's still prejudice. But they're like, oh, if the white man found out where the entrances are, they go down there with cameras and then they kidnap beings and creatures and they would cause an intercontinental war and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And they make it sound like white people bring the end of the world upon sooner, right? Which, unfortunately, is probably true. Could all pretty much admit that, yeah, if we ever found a Bigfoot, that would be all over the news. They'd be charging $1 million to see the body and blah, blah, blah. This is how people are, unfortunately. But anybody, despite your skin color, acts like that, even Native Americans. So. But, yeah, the Rephaim are giants. So, the giants are down in the underworld. That's why we're talking about the king of Babylon being sent down there, waking up for the old Rephaim, right? So, they're down there. They are down there. And that's why I started off with Isaiah 24, right? Where it talks about, it has come to pass in that day, Jehovah layeth a charge on the host of the high place in the high place, the fallen angels, right? And on the kings of the land on the land. Remember it said in that earlier verse that the kings of the nations, these Rephaim under the earth, right? And the kings of the land on the land, they've been gathered, a gathering of bound ones in a pit. And shut up, they have been in a prison. And after a multitude of days are inspected. Right? And they're inspected when the moon, where is it? And ashamed has been the sun, and confounded has been the moon. So that's when they're released. And in Revelations 9:1, and the fifth messenger did sound, and I saw a star out of the heaven having fallen to the earth, and there was given to it the key of the pit of the abyss. And he did open the pit of the abyss, and there came up a smoke out of the pit as the smoke of a great furnace, and darkened was the sun in the air from the smoke of the pit. And I'm just going to search for that Tartarus verse because it's also, yeah, 2 Peter 2:4. For if God messengers who sinned did not spare, that's fallen angels right there. For if God messengers who sinned did not spare, but with chains of thick gloom, having cast them down to Tartarus, did deliver them to judgment, having been reserved. Just like what Isaiah 24 said, right? And what Enoch said, after 70 generations, that they would be released and they would be judged. Now, did I finish Ezekiel 32? Yeah, maybe that's a good point. Maybe down in the inner earth regions, there's like a big underground ocean. Well, you know, like down there, an ocean down there, right? And that's sealing off. And if you went down to the bottom of that ocean, it would be the entrance down to the yeah, that would be pretty interesting. Um, so yeah, I did finish Ezekiel 32. So there's a lot of people down there, and there are other verses. There are other. If I spend another hour or two scouring my brain cells for any verse that I've read over the last 15 years, I could probably find a few more here as well. But in Ephesians 4, starting at verse 8, it says, "Wherefore he saith, having gone up on high, he led captive captivity and gave gifts to men." This is talking about Jesus. "And that he went up." What? I read the original translation, it's so confusing. It says, "And that he went up." What is it except that he also went down first to the lower parts of the earth? For he who went down is the same also who went up far above all the heavens, that he may fill all things. Now that's pretty cool. I didn't know until today that that term, the lower parts, was used. And the reason why is because a lot of verses in the Bible are repeated, sometimes with slightly different wording, because it's just like how you have two or three witnesses. You have the four Gospels. It's not they're contradicting; they're giving different but true perspectives of the same one thing, right? It's still 100% true, just different perspectives, different way of approaching describing it. You see what I mean? So, and also it can reveal that it has, two things are happening at once. So here it's that Jesus went down to the lower parts of the earth. That's pretty interesting. And then over here in 1 Peter 3, it says in verse 18, "Because also Christ once for sin did suffer, righteous for unrighteous, that he might lead us to God, having been put to death indeed in the flesh, and having been made alive in the spirit, in which also to the spirits in prison, having gone, he did preach, who sometime disbelieved, when once the long suffering of God did wait, in days of Noah, an ark being prepared, in which few, that is, 8 souls, were saved through water." Oh, wow. The verse I talked about earlier about the baptisms right here now. Verse 21. "Also to which an antitype does now save us." Man, he's talking about the great flood, symbolizing the great baptism for the world, right? I've never heard churches talk about that. I mean, come on, that's pretty awesome, right? And it says, "Also to which an antitype, the flood, does now save us." Baptism, not a putting away of the filth of the flesh, not the dirt off the body, like I was saying, but the question of a good conscience in regard to God, right? That's what the true baptism is, right? Yeah, there's two sides of one story, right? Yeah, that's what you do, the good conscience. When you have your good conscience, that's when you get the Holy Spirit come upon you, right? If you don't deserve it, the Holy Spirit's not going to come into a house that doesn't want it. You see what I mean? When the house is clean, then the Holy Spirit will come in, right? And if you kick the Holy Spirit out of the house, then you grieve the Holy Spirit away. So the question of a good conscience in regard to God through the rising again of Jesus Christ. So apparently, like I said before, as above, so below. Down there's the prison spirit realm, and there's the physical realm where there are living beings, living giants, giants being formed beneath the waters in the lower parts of the earth. The kings of the nations who are being woken up. I mean, if people who want to say, oh, it means death, they're all dead down there, it symbolizes the grave, why are they waking up for the Rephaim? The Rephaim? The uncircumcised get resurrected first? Come on, right? There's holes in that theory, right? So that proves it. So let's get back to Abaddon, okay? Let's read about Abaddon first, and then about Typhon, okay? It says here, the Hebrew term Abaddon and its Greek equivalent Apollyon appear in the Bible as both a place of destruction and an angel of the abyss. In the Hebrew Bible, Abaddon is used with reference to a bottomless pit, often appearing alongside the place Sheol, meaning the realm of the dead. And if you look that word up in Hebrew, it means underworld, right? This is Wikipedia, okay? This ain't the Hebrew dictionary. And like I said, Hebrew has multiple meanings for every word. Adam means red, it means clay, I think it means earth as well. It means man, okay? Tons of words have double meanings. And it says, in the New Testament book of Revelation, an angel called Abaddon is described as the king of an army of locusts, the army of the Nephilim that's coming out of the earth. So he's the king of the Nephilim. Is Abaddon Satan? I don't think Abaddon is Satan. He might be. I can't say I'm 100% certain. But I don't think he is, because there's no real connection made between Abaddon and Satan. Where it talks about Satan being released from the pit, killing the two witnesses, going up to fight Jesus and all that there, is very, very clear. It's talking about Satan and the great dragon and blah, 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 right? The adversary, it says, right? When it talks about Abaddon, it just means the king of destruction. So let's keep that in mind. He's the king of the army of the locusts. And his name is first transcribed in Greek, Revelations 9:11. See, this is another bastardized English rendering. Here they say the angel of death. I've never even heard that one before. Abaddon means destruction. Okay, that's what it means. Here it says, yeah, translated, which in Greek means the destroyer, Apollyon. Okay, now, but mind you, the name destroyer is kind of cool, in a bad way, but it's kind of cool. It says the Latin Vulgate and the Douay-Rheims Bible have additional notes not present in the Greek text. In Latin, exterminans being the Latin word for destroyer. Entomology. According to the Brown Driver Briggs lexicon, the Hebrew Abaddon is an intensive form of the Semitic root and verb stem abad, which means perish, transitive destroy, which occurs 184 times in the Hebrew Bible. The Septuagint, an early Greek translation of the Hebrew Bible, renders Abaddon as, I can't read Greek. While the Greek Apollyon comes from apollimi, to destroy, the Greek term Apollyon, the destroyer, is the active participle of apollimi, to destroy. So basically it means destruction, right? Now, Judaism says the Hebrew Bible. The term Abaddon appears 6 times in the Masoretic text of the Hebrew Bible. Abaddon means destruction or place of destruction or the realm of the dead, and is accompanied by Sheol. In Job 2, I point, again, this is Wikipedia, but I point this out, right? It says it's accompanied by Sheol. So they just said the realm of the dead is accompanied by Sheol. It didn't say Sheol is the realm of the dead. See what I mean? It's play on the words and the double meanings for everything, right? So in Job 26:6, it says the grave Sheol is naked before him, and destruction Abaddon is no covering, for example. In Job 28:22, another example, destruction, Abaddon, and death say. Okay, so it's got different uses of the definition Abaddon, right? Now, in the Second Temple era text, the text of the Thanksgiving hymns, which is found in the Dead Sea Scrolls, tells of the Sheol of Abaddon and the torrents of Belial that burst into Abaddon. The biblical antiquities, misattributed to Philo, mentions Abaddon as a place, destruction, rather than an individual. Abaddon is also one of the compartments of Gehenna. By extension, it can mean an underworld abode of lost souls, or Gehenna. This is like later period stuff. It's not as pinpoint as the Bible, not as trustworthy. I like the Dead Sea Scrolls. Some of them I do trust, but to each their own. But I'm just reading everything that's here, right? In rabbinical literature, it says, in some legends, Abaddon is identified as a realm where the damned lie in fire and snow, one of the places in Gehenna that Moses visited. Now, in Christianity, in the New Testament, the Christian scriptures contain the first known depiction of Abaddon as an individual entity instead of a place. Since we're a Christian, that's what we'll go by. Revelations 9:11. Isn't that ironic, 9:11? And this guy didn't know about 9/11 before this happened. It says, a king. I guess it's not a place, is it, right? A king, the angel of the bottomless pit, whose name in Hebrew is Abaddon, and in Greek Apollyon, in Latin exterminans. In Revelations 9:11, Abaddon is described as destroyer, the angel of the abyss, and as the king of a plague of locusts resembling horses with crowned human faces, which is all metaphorical. Women's hair, lion's teeth, wings, iron breastplates, and a tail with a scorpion stinger that torments for 5 months anyone who does not have the seal of God on their foreheads. Quick interpretation of the symbolism of the scorpion stinger that torments for 5 months. This is explained later in the text. Scorpions and scorpion tail and the stinger symbolizes death and suffering and pain. Okay, so we know from Revelations 9 it talks about they're going to seek death for 5 months and they won't find it. They'll be tormented like with torment like that of a scorpion, right? So that's what it's talking about. So in the symbolism of Revelations 9:11 leaves the identity of Abaddon open to interpretation. Protestant commentator Matthew Henry, who cares about what they think? Um, I'm not even going to bother reading what the Gnostics think. Yeah, who cares about that? So that's what it says about Abaddon. So all we really can gather here is that the general consensus is he's a big bad ruler of the pit, right? Is it talking about the bottomless pit? Is it talking about Sheol? Could be either, could be both, right? That's for us to determine. But let's take a quick look at Typhon here. I just have an inkling of a feeling that, what if Typhon was Abaddon, right? We've got the Greek going for both, right? Greek is destroyer, and Typhon is indexed under Greek mythology. Typhon is part of Greek mythology, right? So the Greeks and the Greek language, they knew all about Typhon. You'll see what I mean, like how much Typhon destroyed. Oh yeah, I've always said there's good giants down there as well. Definitely. Oh, and man, my eye looked weird there. Um, what is it? I kept checking. I didn't notice Galatians verse come up, but just let me know which Galatians verse I can get to that right after this. This is literally the last thing I have to read, the Typhon thing. Now, why do I think Typhon has anything to do with Abaddon? Well, Typhon was famously cast into Tartarus, which is where Abaddon is apparently coming out of. Okay? Typhon basically embodies destruction. He basically could have been called, may have been called the Destroyer. He definitely represents utter destruction. So I think it's fair to say, and if I'm not mistaken, he is noted as being like the ruler of all the monsters as well. So it could be Abaddon. Now, what relevance would that have to us? Well, if Abaddon, most people don't think about Abaddon, right? We don't really worry about him, you know what I mean? What if Abaddon is Typhon, right? What if Typhon is going to come back out? I mean, good lord, that would make a movie, you know what I mean? But I really would not want to be in that city. So, and if you've never heard what Typhon looked like, get ready to hear this, because Typhon was the abomination of abominations. He was an absolute horrendous abomination. And because these titans, my theory has always been, some of the videos on my old channel, I'm going to erase this super quick, okay? The fallen angels were Anunnaki, because the B'nai Elohim who came here to do stuff for God were, not all angels are Anunnaki, but some of the angels means messengers, the messengers live where the stars, constellations, sun and moon are. That's throughout the Bible. I've talked about that so many times. Okay, the Anunnaki who came here originally were to do work for God. There were 600, okay, and Marduk, who is Satan, long story short, the son of Enki, who was the chief of that group of Anunnaki who came over. Enki worked for mankind. He seemed to be a good guy from all the texts that I read. Maybe not perfect, but, had best intentions for mankind. His son was a rotten bastard. He is Satan. He's Marduk, 666, Ra Marduk, who ruled Babel, Babylon, everything, right? Crowley, all the Satanists, all the Illuminati worship him, right? So, Marduk wanted to rule the world and all of that there. And what happened was, thank you, I regained my train of thought. He fell in love with a Genesis 6:4. He fell in love with a mortal woman. He lusted after her, and what he wanted to do was he wanted to get married to her, right? So 200 of the 600 wanted to do the same. So he said, yeah, let's come down, let's make this agreement. This is recorded in the book of Enoch. Another name for Satan, Marduk, was Azazel. Okay, that's why Satan, Marduk, is symbolized as Baphomet, the goat man, goat Azazel. Okay, so the goat for Azazel, I mean. So 1/3 of those angels, okay, because you have to stop and think about it. Where it says 1/3 of the angels were drawn down, this isn't 1/3 of all beings in existence. That's ludicrous. It's absolutely ludicrous. you couldn't count the number of beings. Right? God has said before that man will be innumerable like the stars of the sky. Can you imagine, like most of the stars are inhabited, how much more life is out there? And to think that 1/3 of all of that got fooled by one guy? No, I don't think so. Right? Even Enoch says it was 200, if I'm not mistaken. So 200 of them went down to Mount Hermon, which is in Lebanon. Okay, and on top of Mount Hermon, they all got married to earth women, Genesis 6:4, and the women bore giants. Because these Anunnaki had Anunnaki DNA, which is probably trillions of years old, superior in evolution from God. Okay? They are so superior that if they were to come to our earth, we would regard them as divine beings, which is what happened to mankind. They were sent here, they were the B'nai Elohim talked about in the Old Testament. He apportioned the 70 B'nai Elohim to rule over and govern the 70 nations. Okay, the nations ended up worshiping them, the star gods such as Remphan and Baal and all that. Instead of Baal meant Lord, they were meant to lord over and govern, right? And in the end, that's what the Anunnaki were supposed to do. Marduk is the one who turned them all. He turned them evil. Marduk says, I am God. Screw the real God. I'm the real God. He usurped his father. He fought his own family. He fought the Anunnaki. He is Satan, right? And they're Anunnaki. They have this DNA that allows them to live near infinite lifespans. They can, most of them or a lot of them can shapeshift. The more powerful archaic ones who have more of the Anunnaki DNA. Their DNA allows them to interbreed with any form of life, which is why the Greek gods, who are the Anunnaki, could do so. They could shapeshift and then reproduce in that form and create a shape, you know what I mean, a hybrid that way. It's just bonkers the amount of interbreeding they did. Read the book of Enoch. They began to sin against all manner of flesh, birds, reptiles, everything, right? Some of the other humanoid beings on the surface were the Naga race, which were the reptilian humanoids. Okay, they've always been here for millions of years. Like Hinduism has said, they live in fantastic, highly technological cities with flying craft at the bottom of the oceans. They're the ones that we see flying around the world. People think they're reptilian aliens. They're not. They're terrestrial reptilians, smarter than humans who have always been here. Part of God's creation. They were the Nahash race from Genesis. Okay, the serpent that was in Eden was one of them. All right, and that's also talked about when the devil is contending with the body of Moses. I think it's in the Dead Sea Scrolls as well, or the Book of Omron, I think it is, where it says that the face of this one looked like the face of a viper, right? That's what they look like. So, my theory was that because of all that Anunnaki DNA with all its potential to heal anything, to adapt, to shapeshift, to reproduce with anything, to spread its DNA like a virus, replicates throughout your body like in seconds, you know what I mean? You become one of them. Because of all this, right? When the Titans and the giant monsters were born, Genesis 6:4, they were hybridizing with everything. So a lot of these giants, the Greeks noted, had reptilian body parts. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of the giants, I think it was the Gigantes. Okay, the Titans, the Greek gods were Titans. They looked beautiful, like very beautiful model people, right? Um, but the Gigantes had serpents, like giant reptilian legs that almost looked like giant pythons, right? They were reptilian from their bottom half down. Look at the Gorgons, who are half human, half reptilian. Look at Scylla, half human, half reptilian. Look at Medusa, right, who is one of the Gorgons, right? So, because of that interbreeding, they probably interbred with the Nagas. I mean, you come to this earth and you see, oh, there's a race of these reptilian beings. They've already got Vimana's flying craft, right? They've already got super advanced cities. Dumb humans ain't gonna even be at that level in another 10,000 years. So what do you think? Well, whatever, 4,000, 3,000, whatever, right? So they're probably going to interbreed with them, right? You know what I mean? And that's what begot these monsters, the Gigantes, right? And Typhon was another one of those semi-reptilian Gigantes, except Titan-sized, right? And it says here that Typhon was a monstrous serpentine giant and one of the most deadly creatures in Greek mythology. According to Hesiod, who is a great Greek writer, go read some of his stuff, he's awesome. According to Hesiod, Typhon was the son of Gaia, which means earth, and Tartarus. Okay, I've studied Greek. That was one of the first other religions that I studied, right? And God, Greek mythology is so symbolic and deep, right? It goes way beyond what people think at the surface level, right? When it says that Typhon was the son of Gaia and Tartarus, right? It's saying that he was born from Earth DNA and DNA from Tartarus, okay? However, one source has Typhon as the son of Hera alone, while another makes Typhon the offspring of Cronus. So, and that's the other problem with Greek literature, right? It's the same with the Bible. You get into biblical debates about stuff. Same with the Greek material, right? Um, I know that because I own all these Greek books, right? But you got to take it all in. Like I always say with the whale, whales go through the ocean, they open their mouth, they take it all in, and they absorb the juicy plankton, right? Which is what they want, and filter all the other garbage out. So, anyways, right? If he was Kronos, if you want to know who Kronos was the son of Uranus. Uranus is the metaphor in Greek. Higher understanding here. Uranus is the metaphor for the stellar gods. Okay, so the ones that came from the heavens. That represents Uranus. Because you're talking about the heavens mating with the earth. That's Genesis 6:4. That's Uranus and Gaia. Okay, and when Uranus and Gaia got together, they bore whoever it was. Okay, Kronos was the first like creator type being made by this birth together, right? Kronos was a Titan. He was the father of all the Titans and everything. Okay, I can't remember if Kronos used to eat his children, so Kronos was pretty bad. Excuse me. Gosh, it's almost like I shouldn't have said that. That was weird. Um, but yeah, no, Kronos was the but compared to the big bad hybrid monster bastard giants, Kronos was actually better, which is kind of bizarre. But Kronos in the legends did eat his son because he didn't want, I think it was Zeus to be born, because he had heard a prophecy that Zeus would overthrow him. Hey, but hey, I guess maybe some good guys can go bad, you know what I mean? Or some people are never good, but they do some good things now and then, you know what I mean? To each their own. Maybe Kronos was like that. But in whatever way, right? He was the product of either Earth and the Abyss, which is pretty interesting, right? Or he's the offspring of Cronus. So he's just one of the giant monsters, right? It says here that Typhon and his mate Echidna. Echidna was another hybrid, crazy Nephilim beast, product of Anunnaki DNA interbreeding. And it says that they were the progenitors of many famous monsters. Typhon, even though he was so huge and monstrous, because of that DNA, he could reproduce, spreading across the land, spreading that Nephilim DNA like a plague, right? And Typhon attempted to overthrow Zeus for supremacy of the cosmos. In Greek mythology, Zeus was not Almighty God. A lot of dumbed-down people think that because they've been dumbed down. Like how they teach you Egyptians are really stupid and they worshipped animals. They did not. The dumb Egyptian commoners did that because they had been dumbed down, but their rulers didn't worship animals. They were symbols for things, right? But the same here with Greek as well, right? Where was I reading this? Yeah, Zeus wasn't the almighty god, but we're being dumbed down as the people, just like in Egypt, to think that Zeus is the almighty god. No, Zeus was the mouthpiece for the almighty god. He's kind of like an archangel if you want to compare it to Christianity, right? He did the will for the... I mean, look at Jude and 2 Peter, right? Some angel cast the giants down into the Tartarus. In Greek mythology, Zeus is the one who did that. Okay, so Typhon, this is why Typhon attempted to go up against Zeus. Right? So even if you think the Greek gods are bad guys, whatever, fine. They were still fighting against the worst giants and monsters on behalf of us. So you should be a little bit grateful for that, if that is true. Right? I kind of believe all those legends were true, right? But Typhon attempted to overthrow Zeus, right? He wanted to overthrow this one who had been appointed to govern over mankind, right? And Typhon wanted supremacy of the cosmos. The two fought a cataclysmic battle, which Zeus finally won with the aid of his thunderbolts. And by the way, Zeus did not bring lightning down. Zeus had a technological weapon crafted by one of the Titan Cyclops. I think it was Prometheus. Okay, and it was a giant rod. And in Hinduism, I think it's Indra. Indra is the equivalent of Zeus in Hinduism. They're uncannily similar. Even the Hindus say that. And in Hinduism, Indra has a weapon, the exact same thing, called a Vajra. Vajra, just to clarify, Vajra. And he has the Vajra, and the Vajra emits lightning bolts. Okay, huge bursts of plasma bolt energy, right? And he used it to fight off the giant dragons and monsters, right? So that's what Zeus used. It's actually a weapon, because these giants, they're not like giants with little fur belts wearing horned helmets. They're not like Viking giants, right? These were Anunnaki star beings who came from another place. They're already titanic, right? They were monstrous in size to start with, right? And that's why their offspring were so huge. They can change shape. People always say, how did they interbreed in Genesis 6:4? Technology, folks, we can do artificial insemination. Cavemen could probably do that, for heaven's sake. It's not complicated, right? Artificial insemination is used on farms. In farming, that's how people started farming and domesticating farm animals, is through that. So it's not hard for that, right? So you have basic technology like that there to do it, and they could also shapeshift. They could reduce their size, they could increase their size. There's probably a limit to how much they can increase their size. I think 450 feet was the most massive. But let me get back on track here. Right? Typhon attempted to overthrow Zeus. They fought a cataclysmic battle, which Zeus finally won with the aid of his thunderbolts. Defeated, Typhon was cast into Tartarus, or buried beneath Mount Etna, or the island of Ischia. I think the most accepted one here is that he was cast into Tartarus. Now, Typhon mythology is part of Greek's succession myth, which explained how Zeus came to rule the gods. Typhon's story is also connected with that of Python, the serpent killed by Apollo, and both stories probably derive from several Near Eastern antecedents. So, in later accounts, Typhon is often confused with the giants. As time went by, Chinese whisperer stories change, you know what I mean? The Greeks probably weren't as strict with their scripture as Jews and Christians are, right? So you get Chinese whisper effect. Now, the birth of Typhon. According to Hesiod's Theogony, Typhon was the son of Gaia and Tartarus. When Zeus had driven the Titans from heaven, that's pretty cool too, right? Zeus had driven the Titans from heaven. If you're going to connect that to Enoch, that would be like Gabriel or the angels banishing the Grigori, the Titans and all that from the higher regions. When Satan, Revelations 12, was banished down to the earth, no more room was found for them in the heavens, right? It says that when the Titans are driven from heaven by Zeus, huge earth bore her youngest child, Typhus, of the love of Tartarus. So Typhon by the love of Tartarus, by the aid of golden Aphrodite. So this would seem that one of the Anunnaki, who was working against Zeus, maybe somehow with technology, and people talk about CERN trying to open up the pit, right? Well, and doing weird experiments. Well, Aphrodite apparently dipped down into Tartarus, so to speak, and using Earth DNA, terrestrial DNA, because the Earth ain't a talking being in Greek mythology. That's a metaphor, right? So she used some DNA from something in the pit and DNA from the Earth to create what? To create Typhon. Okay? And it says that the mythographer Apollodorus adds that Gaia bore Typhon in anger at the gods, the Greek gods, for their destruction of her offspring, the giants. Numerous other sources mention Typhon as being the offspring of Gaia, or simply earthborn with no mention of Tartarus. I'm just going to simplify things down. I can skip all of that. So let's go to the description of Typhon. This is the cool part. According to Hesiod, Typhon was terrible, outrageous, and lawless, immensely powerful, and on his shoulders were 100 snakeheads that emitted fire and every kind of noise. By the way, he was Titan size, so he was about 450 feet tall, right? Which is about half the size of the Empire State Building. It's kind of scary that we have buildings bigger now, but it's kind of cool as well. Okay, so picture something that size to start with, right? I was in New York a couple of years ago, and I was in my hotel room. I was looking up, picturing like, oh, what if when the Titans come back, right? And I'm in New York, and I was pretending, imagining seeing them walk around behind the buildings, and I was counting the stories on the building to see how tall it was, and I saw a 45-story building, so that would be 450 feet tall, and that's pretty big, man. That is some serious stuff. So it says, strength was in his hands in all that he did, and the feet of the strong God were untiring. From his shoulders grew 100 heads of a snake, a fearful dragon with dark flickering tongues, and from under the brows of his eyes in his marvelous heads flashed fire, and fire burned from his heads as he glared. And there were voices in all his dreadful heads which uttered, oh, right, and there were voices in all his dreadful heads which uttered every kind of sound unspeakable. For at one time they made sounds such as the gods understood, but at another the noise of a bull bellowing aloud in proud, ungovernable fury, and at another the sound of a lion, relentless of heart, and at another sound like whelps, wonderful to hear, and again at another he would hiss, so that the high mountains re-echoed. So this creature, because he has so many demonic body parts, like just spawned off of his body, like the creature from the movie The Thing, right? They're making all these noises. Like you can almost just like imagine like the horrendous way that would sound, right? As he's tearing through the landscapes and everything. Like his voice is echoing off the mountains. It would just drive people nuts. I mean, it'd be bad enough something that big going through your countryside, but it's got like 50 million mouths or whatever all over it, and they're all screeching and other horrific animal noises, and that would drive a city bonkers. It would just drive you mental. Be like audio torture. It says the Homeric hymn to Apollo describes Typhon as fell and cruel, and like neither gods nor men. Three of Pindar's poems have Typhon as 100-headed, as in Hesiod, while apparently a fourth gives him only 50 heads, but 100 heads for Typhon became standard. Now, usually the Greek gods, those titans and stuff, would be beautiful and of human form. They wouldn't have weird body parts and all that. The monstrous ones were usually those born from Tartarus or Earth. Okay? The Greek titans came from the heavens, right? Uranus was their father. That's different, right? The Gigantes and all the other earthborn hybrid monster bastardizations, that was from Uranus and Earth, or like I said, Tartarus and Earth, and so forth, right? And the earthborn ones, the monster ones, had the horrendous body parts, mixture of body parts, multiple heads, like too many heads. The hecatoncheires, whatever you call them, had like 50 arms and 50 or 100 arms and 50 heads, because they were bastardizations of nature, like the utter abomination of God's creation and DNA on this earth, right? And Typhon is like the uber exaggeration of that. Like that's why I kind of think if anybody is going to be Abaddon representing destruction, it's probably Typhon. So it says a Chalcidian Hydrea depicts Typhon as a winged humanoid from the waist up, with two snake tails below. And that's become the commonly accepted iconography, right? Like the Gigantes, which is why I brought it up earlier. A lot of them had either a reptilian lower half, like their whole lower half was a snake, like a snake body, or they had like two, like a, some snakes are born with two heads or two tails and all that there. They had like two snake tails for their bottom half, right? And giant wings, probably reptilian, right? So that's pretty demonic looking, right? And yeah, humanoid from the waist up, two snake tails below. A Aeschylus, I can't pronounce it, calls Typhon fire breathing. For Nicander, Typhon was a monster of enormous strength and strange appearance. Yeah, I do think there is a wall, and they're probably trying to take it. The Illuminati's probably trying to take it down. Definitely. They've probably been sending off all those bombs, atom bombs, below the surface to help free up caverns for them to come up to the surface, in my opinion. Because that alternative three, the world depopulation, that's what they want. What's the best way to do it? Let out the locusts. You know what I mean? But before they let out the locusts, they got to have their safe havens made, which is why they practice Jade Helm, and they've got all the underground bases set up. That's why I used to talk about on my old channel all the time. Um, So yeah, Typhon was for Nicander. Typhon was a monster of enormous strength and strange appearance, many heads, hands, and wings, and huge snake coils coming from his thighs. Polydorus describes Typhon as a huge winged monster whose head brushed the stars. Just meaning when you looked up at him, he was so huge it looked like his head was up in the heavens, and his eyes were like flashing light or like emitting light and fire. It says in size. This music is getting ridiculous now. Um, what is it? Yeah. Polydorus. In size and strength, he surpassed all the offspring of Earth. As far as the thighs, he was of human shape and of such prodigious bulk that he outtopped all the mountains. Maybe he was bigger than 450 feet. Maybe. He outtopped all the mountains, and his head often brushed the stars. One of his hands reached onto the west and the other onto the east. This is obviously figurative. And from them projected 100 dragons' heads. From the thighs downwards he had huge coils of vipers, which when drawn out reached his very head and emitted a loud hissing. His body was all winged. Remember, the seraphim have wings all over, right? So if you think this Typhon dude sounds weird, the Bible's got weird sounding creatures. The cherubim from the Bible are weird sounding creatures. They're just like the Greek sphinxes, right? Or weirder. So his body was all winged, unkempt hair streamed on the wind from his head and cheeks, and fire flashed from his eyes. See, he really just looks like an utter, distressingly horrendous abomination. A lot of these descriptions are very similar, so I'm not going to read them all. This is just a very comprehensive write-up. Now, the offspring. So let's take a quick peek at who his offspring was. According to Hesiod's Theogony, Typhon was joined in love, gross, to Echidna, a monstrous half-woman and half-snake, who bore Typhon fierce offspring. First, according to Hesiod, there was Orthrus, the two-headed dog who guarded the cattle of Geryon. Second, Cerberus, the multi-headed dog who guarded the gates of Hades, the spirit realm. And third, and I want to point out here, a lot of cultures in the world associate a big dog, big black dog, with the spirit prison realm, Hades. Here's a few examples. Native Americans, a lot of tribes assimilate a black wolf or a great wolf with that. Egyptian, we had Anubis, right? Canine, that's good enough. It's a black canine. Who was the emissary, the guide for the dead, entered into the land of Hades, right? Then in Greek, you had Cerberus guarding Hades. Norse mythology, Scandinavian mythology, right? You had Fenrir, the wolf, giant in almost all of these cases, okay? Right? Cultures from around the world all saying the same thing. So, in Cerberus, multi-headed dog guarded the gates of Hades. And third, the Lernaean Hydra, the many-headed serpent, kind of like Leviathan, right? When one of its heads was cut off, two more grew in its place. That's the Anunnaki DNA, fighting to survive, able to adapt to anything, unkillable, right? That's why it was forbidden. Genesis 6:4, God forbade them from interbreeding. He made little people. He had those giant angels. You're not supposed to interbreed, right? Humans are nowhere. Man was made a little less than the angels, right? We're not at their level. That's why it's forbidden to interbreed. So he made the Hydra. The Theogony next mentions an ambiguous she, which might refer to Echidna as the mother of the Chimera, a fire-breathing beast that was part lion, part goat, and had a snake-headed tail. Does that sound familiar, folks? Let's pull open the Bible. Get ready for this one. Some people don't know this, some people know this. If you don't know it, this will blow your top off. It's in Revelations. Yep. Revelations 9, I do believe. Let's pull it open. It's like verse 18 or 19. Ah, Revelations 9, when the pit's opened, what do you know? Well, just the preceding verses Loose the four messengers who are bound at the great river Euphrates. And it says, oh, they go on to kill 1/3 of mankind. It says that these creatures almost have bodies like horses, okay? And they have lions' heads, okay? So a four-legged, horse-like body with a lion's head. And it says that their tails are like serpents having heads on them, okay? That's what the creature looks like. Let's go look what the chimera is. Chimera is is a fire-breathing beast. Do those creatures breathe fire? Out of their mouths proceedeth fire. From Revelations. No joke. Verse 17. So it's basically a chimera. I think there's another one. It could be there's like a chimera, a manticore. I think there's a third one. Somebody's telling me there's a third one too, and I just can't remember it because I've seen the word chimera now. Chimera is a little bit different because I had a goat on it as well, right? But fire-breathing beast, part lion, part goat. Goat's close enough to a horse, right? But I think it had a goat head coming off of it, if I'm not mistaken. And a snake-headed tail, okay? Fire-breathing with a part lion, snake-headed tail. That's the thing in Revelations, okay? So it's Greek mythology. Greek mythology tells us about Tartarus, tells us about the giants, tells us about how they were imprisoned in Tartarus. These creatures that have been sent to Tartarus, and now the Bible's telling us Tartarus is going to be opened up, and these creatures from Greek mythology are going to come out. And their leader is named Apollyon, a Greek name, right? That's pretty interesting. So, I just made a connection here. I'm trying to connect Typhon to Apollyon. The Chimera being the offspring of Typhon is a pretty fair connection, if you ask me, actually. It says, while mentioning Cerberus and other monsters as being the offspring of Echidna and Typhon, the mythographer Akusilaus adds the Caucasian eagle, the giant eagle. Oh my gosh, man, I covered this in like the other stream the other day. And we're talking about like all the end time monsters, man. Jewish literature talks about, I think even the Book of Enoch or Jubilees, whatever it is, they talk about the giant bird creature, the giant Ziz, okay? The giant dragon, the giant serpent creature called Leviathan, and its counterpart called Behemoth. Okay? Just like the Godzilla movie that just came out, right? You got Rodan, which is the Ziz bird. You got Godzilla being Leviathan, right? And got the enemy monster being Behemoth or whatever, right? I mean, they're all enemies. But the Caucasian eagle that ate the liver of Prometheus, right? Prometheus was one of the Greek gods who tried to do something for mankind to give mankind liberation, right? Remember, Prometheus was tortured because he wanted to help liberate mankind? Well, he's being punished with the Caucasian eagle, this giant bird, right? And also Typhon bore Ladon. Who is Ladon? Let's look up Ladon. I think Ladon was a dragon. Let's see. But it gives you an idea of his genetic background, right? Come on, internet. Don't be slow. Ladon. Greek mythology. Ah. Oh, wow. A giant serpent with like 100 heads. Cool. Okay. So, yeah, well, he bore the Hydra, so it would make sense then, I guess, if he would bore a type like Ladon. And the Sphinx. What's in Egypt? The Sphinx. Right? Also adds the Nemean lion, which was a giant lion. And the Promonian sow, which is a giant pig or boar, killed by the hero Theseus. And Hygnius adds to that list the Gorgons, who was the mother of Medusa. Okay, I mentioned the Gorgons earlier. Also that Typhon bore the Colchian dragon. I mean, it's starting to look like Typhon bore all these crazy Nephilim monsters on the earth. And, yes, in Babylonian religion, okay, which I've also studied, I've studied virtually every blinking religion on the planet. It's ridiculous. In the Babylonian religion, I'm pretty sure it was the god Marduk. Marduk was in charge of all the Anunnaki at some point later down the line, right? So it's fair enough to say that at some point Marduk was in charge of this. And I'm pretty sure I am right. Marduk created the seven monsters. Let me go look that up because that's actually a really cool story. Marduk, seven monsters. I can't remember what their. There's a term for it, but there are seven. There's seven great monsters that Marduk created according to Babylonian myth. When you read them, they're listed off as giant serpents, giant dragons, um, sphinxes. Okay, it's basically the same list here, right? I just can't remember. It's like a Babylonian term or something like that. Can't remember what it is right now. So, yeah. And also, oh wow, the Colchian dragon, Scylla, which was that abomination part, like sea creature, reptilian woman Scylla who would eat the sailors as they went by her craggy rock. The Harpies, who are bird people. And he's changing his form, right? Where he's like the epitome of bastardization of DNA. So I guess anytime he has a child, especially with his bastardized wife, they're gonna pop out bastardized crazy mutant monster children, right? So that's pretty interesting and freaky stuff. His battle with Zeus. Should I bother reading that? Yeah, this got mentions the Titans. Oh wow. It says that Hesiod's theogony gives us the first account of their battle between Zeus and Typhon. According to Hesiod, without the quick action of Zeus, Typhon would have come to reign over mortals and immortals. In the theogony, Zeus and Typhon meet in cataclysmic conflict. Zeus thundered hard and mightily, and the earth around resounded terribly in the wide heaven above, and the sea and ocean streams in the nether parts of the earth. Great Olympus reeled beneath the divine feet of the king as he arose, and earth groaned thereat. And through the two of them heat took hold of the dark blue sea, through the thunder and lightning, and through the fire from the monster, and the scorching winds and blazing thunderbolt. The whole earth seethed, and the sky and sea and the long waves raged along the beaches. It says the whole earth seethed and all that. It's talking about all this stuff going on. And remember Isaiah 24, where all this, the earth was reeling and all of that there, where God is judging all these ones, right? The If I'm not mistaken, the Anunnaki Genesis 6:4 took place after 4000 BC. I think it happened around 3000 or something BC, just offhand, roughly around there. Could be within a couple hundred years, right? So that's not super ancient times, you know what I mean? It's still in Adamic time period, and just before the flood, right? And where is it? Let me continue. The whole earth seethed, and sky and sea and the long waves raged along the beaches round and about at the rush of the deathless gods. And there arose an endless shaking. Hades trembled where he rules over the dead below, and the Titans under Tartarus, who live with Cronus. Oh wow. Because of the unending clamor and the fearful strife. What did the Bible just say earlier? Rephaim are beneath the waters. Rephaim are in the lower parts of the earth. Here's the Greek religion saying that the Titans under Tartarus, who live with Cronus. Wow. Yeah, sorry. So when Zeus had raised up his might and seized his arms, thunder and lightning and lurid thunderbolt, he leaped from Olympus and struck Typhon and burned all the marvelous heads of the monster about him. When Zeus had conquered him and lashed him with strokes, Typhoeus was hurled down a maimed wreck, so that the huge earth groaned. And flame shot forth from the thunder-stricken Lord in the dim rugged glens of the mount when he was smitten. A great part of the huge earth was scorched by the terrible vapor, and melted as tin melts when melted by men's art in channeled crucibles, or as iron, which is the hardest of all things, is shortened by glowing fire in mountain glens, and melts in the divine earth through the strength of Hephaestus. Even so then the earth melted in the glow of the blazing fire. And then defeated, Typhon is cast into Tartarus by an angry Zeus. Wow. And there's some accounts that Typhon was so massive and monstrous and destructive that It says, like Pindar, Nikandar has all the Greek gods, who were titans. Who were titans? Okay, the Greek gods were titans. All of the gods, but Zeus and Athena, were so terrified of Typhon that they transformed into animals and fled to Egypt to hide. That's pretty shameful. You're a titan and you're so scared of this monster. Well, that's not shameful. It's kind of shows us how frightening I guess Typhon would be. So Typhon, do you see what I mean? He really does embody destruction from the accounts of him. Let's see what else is here. Probably skip over all of that. Oh wow! Oh cool. Yeah, Wikipedia is pretty good at times. People insult Wikipedia, but it can be pretty good. Here's it's drawing the connections that I mentioned to like Babylonian and stuff, right? It says here from at least as early as Pindar, and possibly as early as Homer and Hesiod, Typhon's birthplace and battle with Zeus were associated with sorry various Near East locales in Cilicia and Syria, including the Corinthian Cave. That sounds cool. Corinthian Cave. Mount Cassius and the Orontes River. Besides this coincidence of place, the Hesiodic succession myth, including the Typhonomachy, which is the war and destruction of Typhon, as well as other Greek accounts of these myths, exhibit other parallels with several ancient Near Eastern and antecedents. My gosh, it's a mouthful. Exhibit other parallels with several ancient Near Eastern antecedents, and it is generally held that the Greek accounts are intimately connected with and influenced by these Near Eastern counterparts, which is what I said. Because it's common sense, it doesn't take a genius. In particular, the Typhonomachy is generally thought to have been influenced by several Near Eastern monster-slaying myths. In Mesopotamia, 3 related god versus monster combat myths, Godzilla, from Mesopotamia date from at least the early 2nd millennium BC or earlier, 2000 BC. Those are the accounts of ancient battles. These are the battles of the god Ninurta with the monsters Asag and Anzu, and the god Marduk's battle with the monstrous Tiamat. Tiamat's in the Bible. Tiamat is in the Bible. Let's go pull that up. Might be version dependent. Oh my gosh, it's that late already. Jeez. Where the heck did the time go, man? Man, that is scary. I'm going to skip that because it is really late. Let's just read on here. With Marduk versus Tiamat, I'll just read one of them. The early 2nd millennium BC Babylonian Akkadian creation epic, the Enuma Elish, which I've read, studied, have copies of, tells the story of the battle of the Babylonian supreme god Marduk. Like I claimed, he's Satan. He ruled Babylon, the mystery Babylon. Babel became Babel was Babylon. All right, that's who all the Illuminati worship, right? Oh, that's what I was looking up. Tiamat. I will do that. Tiamat. Oops. Come on, Tiamat. No, it's not in there. The other name for Tiamat is Rahab. Rahab's in there. Let's read that. Isaiah 51:9. Awake, awake, put on strength, O arm of Jehovah. Awake as in days of old, generations of ages. Art not thou that it is hewing down Rahab, piercing a dragon? Hebrews 11:31, prophetic parallelism. By faith, Rahab the harlot, mystery whore Babylon, riding on the beast who is the dragon, right? But Rahab the harlot was declared righteous. I don't think that's going to happen. But Rahab, I'm sure there's another. Oh, you know what? I think it's this one here. In Psalms 89:10. Let's open up the full chapter. Rahab's talked about as being a drag of Tiamat, depending on your translation. Um, it might be in KJV or something. Either way, I'm taking too much time here. Tiamat, Rahab, whatever, is a dragon that's in the seas that God slays, right? In the Bible. Yeah, there's a lot of different countries too. Wow, words I can't pronounce. A lot of them. A lot of different nations is pretty interesting. So I'll look up the Galatians verse if you're still here. Sorry if it's been a while. 145. If you're there, I will check it out. Daniel 2:43. Yeah, let's check out Daniel 2:43 then. Galatians 3. Okay, I'll check that one first. And what is it that you were saying? I vaguely remember, but you were saying that the Galatians were a certain people, or what was it that you were saying? I just want to clarify. I'm reading the chapter now. Oh, are you talking about how it mentions seed of Abraham? Is that what you're alluding to? Oh, I see. Okay. Ah, okay. So the yeah, I was right in the back of my head. That's what I was thinking you had originally said. Yeah, that's entirely possible, man. Yeah, I know for a fact now a lot of like the further you go back in time, there were still tribes of giants around, and a lot of people say that like the Goths and like the Gauls and them. There's all these legends that the Goths and the Gauls were invincible. Like you could not destroy them. Like they were huge. They were giant. Not only like 7 or 8 feet, right? But they were remnants of giants. It's very very possible. And even in North America, they had giants with blonde hair and red hair that were 7, 8 feet to 10 feet tall, ferociously powerful and strong. Couldn't be defeated in battle. Some people said that they were, sorry, Vikings or, those type of European peoples who came over by boat. In either case, it's the point proven. Yeah, so the Galatians. Let's look up on the internet who the Galatians were. Do a little background. What's it say at the beginning here? The thoughtless Galatians who did bewitch you not to obey the truth. Yeah. Hmm. Let's see who the Galatians were. Who were the Galatians? Oh, cool. Hey, well, that's just that's I didn't even know who the Galatians were, and that's just irony. It's like basically what I just said. It says the Galatians were a Celtic people. This is the same region I was just talking about. That's pretty cool. Celtic people that dwelt mainly in the north central regions of Asia Minor or Anatolia, in what was known as Galatia in today's Turkey. Okay, that's definitely a giant region. In their origin, they were part of the great Celtic migration that invaded Macedon, led by Brennus. Hmm, interesting. Oh, cool. Here's a Zondervan academic site. Who were the Galatians? Let's see what they say. This will be interesting. I mean, even up, I think, in Norway or somewhere, one of those countries, the height of the average guy is like 6'7", and they're all like super tall. You know what I mean? Blonde and all that there. Uh, Galatia became a Roman province in 25 BC, which is before Jesus, and the province included people from many ethnic groups, including the Celts or Galatians, who had that I never knew my entire life that the Galatians were Celtic people. What? Seriously, that is bonkers. I'm glad you brought that up today. Yeah, a lot of people believe that the Celts were remnants of giants, man. Yeah, so I could get with that. True, true. Oh. I mean, look at the strongman competition, right? Look at the guys who are lifting 500-pound rocks. They're Swedish people. They're the blonde hair, blue eyes. I'm not trying to say that blonde, blue eyes are like superior godmen or anything, because I know for a fact that there are black giants or giants in the film of all different racial backgrounds, right? But the Celts were said to be from, descended from them. That's pretty cool. And they had migrated. The Celts had migrated to Asia Minor by 278 BC. Hmm. In Paul's day, excuse me, drink some of my Kool-Aid, blue raspberry lemonade. I haven't had Kool-Aid since I was a child, but we had it at the funeral for my grandpa and his brother. Both died within the same week. And I was like, oh, the Kool-Aid's pretty nice, so I bought some. I don't normally drink it though. It says, in Paul's day, the province was a large area that touched the Black Sea in the north and the Mediterranean in the south. As time passed, however, the province changed. Vespasian detached almost all of Pisidia from Galatia in AD 74, and about AD 137, Lycaonia Galatica was removed and added to the large province of Cilicia. In AD 297, southern Galatia was united with surrounding regions to form a new province of Pisidia with Antioch as its capital. I've heard of Antioch. Hmm. It says here, I'm not going to bother reading it. Well, the smarty pants scholar dudes are like debating, oh, because at the time period, it wasn't just Celts, it was a mix of ethnic peoples that Paul was speaking to a mix of peoples, whatever, you know what I mean? I think the point is proven the Galatians were Celts. Oh, that's pretty cool. Would you say it was Daniel 2:4, I think? I can't scroll back up and look at the comments, unfortunately. Let's check out Daniel 2:4. Yeah, must have been a different verse. Pretty sure it was Daniel 2, so let's open up Daniel 2. I know somewhere in Daniel it talks about a watcher coming down. Oh, 2:43. Okay, cool. Wow, that's a big chapter. Wow. Oh, yeah, yeah, exactly, yeah. That's right. Yeah, as in 42, as to the toes of the feet, part of them iron and part of them clay. Some part of the kingdom is strong and some part of it is brittle. Because thou hast seen iron mixed with the miry clay, they are mixing themselves with the seed of men and are not adhering one with the other, even as iron is not mixed with the clay. And in the days of these kings, raise up does the God of the heavens a kingdom that is not destroyed to the age, and his kingdom to another people it's not left. It beateth all and endeth all these kingdoms, and it standeth to the age. So that's definitely at the end of times. Yeah, I've talked about that in like on my old channel as well. Yeah, that's them mixing with the seed of mankind, like it says, with the seed of men. That's why it says the messengers won't be able to tell us apart the tares from the wheat because we look the same. Not only did the Anunnaki look human, right? They can also change their shape, but they've also been interbreeding with us, not the Anunnaki, but their progeny, right? Have been interbreeding with us to look like us. Even the aliens, which I believe are just terrestrial races like the Greys or the reptilians, they're interbreeding with us. So, like Genesis 6:4 continually happening, right? Trying to make themselves look like us, right? Because they want that image of God, I guess. That's the only thing I could imagine. Maybe that's what the serpent was jealous over. Maybe he just saw how good looking Adam and Eve were and were just like, oh, I don't like my serpent form. I don't know. You know what I mean? Does the devil really look like a serpent? I don't think so. I've also wondered, because I believe Marduk is Satan. The Anunnaki were not reptilians, right? They were humans. I wonder if he, but they were shapeshifters. I wonder if he just shapeshifted into the Nahash, the Naga form, or as many people suggest, even many noteworthy rabbis, they say that the Nahash was a race of beings on this earth, and that wasn't, the big one Satan that came to tempt. It was just a Nahash, and the Nahash was being led by Satan to tempt them, just like how he does to everybody else. You see what I mean? Because God didn't curse a race of creatures. He didn't curse the serpent. Some churches used to teach it was the serpents used to have legs, right? I was even taught that in church, for heaven's sake. And come on, that's like medieval stupidity, right? Some churches teach, or a lot of synagogues would teach, it's the race of like the Nahash, but God didn't curse a whole race because of one. It was Satan was leading this one to mislead Adam and Eve. He used them like a tool. I think that's a reasonable option. I think. But I don't think Satan is a reptilian, to be honest. He could definitely pose like one. Definitely could. But what was it in 43? Yeah, iron mixed with the clay. The messengers won't be able to tell the tares apart from the clay. And the only reason this makes sense is if they look fully human like us. That's probably why they want to blend in with us, right? Like the iron mixed with the miry clay, mixing themselves with the seed of men. They're not adhering with one another, even as iron is not mixed with the clay. So even though they're mingling amongst us, even though they're interbreeding with us to look like us, they can't they're not cohesive with us because they're contrary to us. They're twisted in their ways of thinking. You know what I mean? So it'll never mix. Let's see if I can. I'll look up the tears. I'll end the stream on that because it's getting towards 2 hours. Uh, I hate it when translations make it hard to look up the words, man. Um, wheat messengers. Nope. I'll have to give up on that one there. Or I could go up into KJV. Let's look up KJV. Let's go to the KJV. So I want to look up terrors. Yeah, I got 8. Matthew 13:25. While men slept, his enemy, the devil, came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. A Genesis 6:3 event happening again. So it's Matthew 13 that I need to read. It's all in Matthew 13. Okay. Starting at verse 25. So that's what I'll end the stream with. Then I'll have to get going. It's really late where I'm living, so. And I've said this before, the parables, I'm not saying that this parable is only to be interpreted on this level. Jews, like the rabbis say that everything deep that God says has 7 levels. The deeper you go or the higher, whichever way around you want to look at it, is the most powerful, right? It takes the most intellect or whatever to get there. But there's more surface level interpretation. So I'm not saying this is the only interpretation for this parable because there's 7 parallel ones, right? But it says in verse 23, he that receives seed into the good ground is he that heareth the word and understand it, which also beareth fruit and bringeth forth some 100-fold, some 60, and some 30. Another parable, and this is another one, another parable he put forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. The kingdom of heaven, right? I made videos on this before. I don't think I uploaded them yet to the new channel. Just been a bit lazy about it. The heavens are outer space, right? And I don't want to get into the flat earth thing and all that, right? The Bible makes it clear that the sun, moon, stars, constellations are the heavens. The hosts of the heavens are there. Judges 5:19 says it all. There's inhabitants in there, and they came and they fight from their courses in the stars, fighting against armies on the earth. God cursed the star Meroz because its inhabitants didn't come to earth to help fight. Right? So, what was I reading here? The kingdom of the heavens, right? So he's talking about his hosts that are in the heavens. Jesus says, I'm not from here, I'm from above, right? It's the kingdom of the heavens, right? And this is, separate from the heaven of heavens. That's different, right? Where is it? Yeah. The kingdom of heaven is likened unto a man which sowed good seed in his field. But while man slept, his enemy, the devil, came and sowed tares among the wheat and went his way. But when the blade was sprung up and brought forth fruit, then appeared the tares also. So the servants of the householder came and said unto him, Sir, did thou not sow good seed in thy field? From whence has it tares? Do you see what I mean? You could literally look at this entire parable from a Genesis 6:4 perspective, right? Literally, it works perfectly for that, right? So, sir, didn't you sow good seed, human seed in this earth? Why is it showing Nephilim, essentially, right? And he said, uh, that's weird. It disconnected really quickly and it came back. That's unusual. Um, from whence then has it tares? And he said unto them, An enemy has done this. The devil, Satan. The servant said unto him, Will thou then that we go and gather them up? But he said, Nay, lest ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Why would he say this? Two reasons. One, there's so many mixed all together. Or B, not discounting the possibility of the first, but more likely, maybe at the same time, is that they can look very similar and you cannot tell them apart, right? Which would be why they're trying to look like us, right? Nay, lest ye gather up the tares, ye root up also the wheat with them. Let both grow together until the harvest. What happens at the harvest? Harvest when moon and sun go red and black. Isaiah 24, that's when all the big bad guys, Book of Enoch, 70 generations are up, and all the big monsters, Nephilim, giants, all the fallen angels have come out ready to be judged, right? And at the time of the harvest, right? What happens when the pit's opened? The pit's opened, and what does the angel say? You are, all the things come out of the pit, you're not allowed to touch those who have the seal of God, right? We know that at that time on the earth, the angels are going to come down, the black horseman, whatever seal it is, number 5, 3, whatever, he has to come down, and his duty is to come down, and he says, don't touch the land, see the air, don't touch any blade of grass, don't touch anything until we have sealed our chosen servants on their foreheads. So even when the monsters have been released, not everybody will have been finalized yet. That's very important for people to understand, right? And it says here that at the time of the harvest, I will say to the reapers, okay, the reapers coming together, it says, gather ye together first the tares, and bind them in bundles to burn them, but gather the wheat into my barn. What's the barn? Barn's place, out of the way. Usually you put the hay up in the loft and the higher part, so you're going to go up into the heavens, right? That's his barn. Right? So you gather the wheat into my barn. And he says another parable. So what he basically said there, so that's the end of that parable, right? Is that Satan came. You had this, the field is earth, right? The crop is man, okay? And Satan came and planted his crop. Looks just like us, but it ain't us, and it's not cohesive, right? It's contrary, and you can't tell them apart. Even the angels can't tell them apart. You have to wait until the time of the harvest, okay? And God's going to send out the black horseman. I've covered this in videos and streams that I've made. He's got to go out. I think it's in my prophetic dream series, right? Where I point out the fact that if the seal of God is the Holy Spirit, what are the angels and the black horsemen doing when they come around and stamping us on the forehead? They're not giving us the seal of God then. Maybe to latecomers, right? Yeah, the latecomers will get that. Those sneaking in at the last minute, yep, that's cool. But loads of us already have the Holy Spirit, so what are we getting stamped up here for? I think it's linked to all this here to differentiate us from those who have the mark of the beast, right? The beings that come out of the pit in Revelations 9, they're not allowed to touch anybody that has the seal of God. So we know that the black horseman, okay, watch my Revelations timeline series. It proves all the events of Revelations in order in relation to one another, right? The black horseman, this is logic, right? Black horseman has to arrive, right, exactly in time to start marking the people, because it tells you in Revelations 9 that when all the things come out, they can't touch those with the seal of God. Okay? So we're going to have to be marked and protected by this mark or whatever from all these things that are coming out, right? That's the only time that they're going to be discerned. And that's the discerning. When the black horseman and those angels come around to give you your seal, right? And you still might have to wait around a little time, right? You still might have to wait around a bit of time. And check this out. Another parable he put forth unto them, saying, the kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard seed, which a man took and sowed in his field, right? Which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it's grown, it is the greatest among herbs, and becomes a tree, so that the birds of the air come and lodge in the branches thereof. Deeper level interpretation for you all here. Birds of the air biblically symbolize messengers. Messengers are celestial messengers. Okay? So it's talking about this little tiny seed begets a giant tree. What's the giant tree symbolize? A nesting place, a home for the celestial beings. So it's talking about here, it says that the kingdom from outer space, the celestial kingdom, is like unto leaven, a little tiny speck, DNA, which a woman, is that a different parable? Yeah, sorry. I'm reading the one below it. Kingdom of heaven is like to a grain of mustard, same thing in effect. A little tiny speck, DNA, which a man took and sowed in his field, which indeed is the least of all seeds, but when it's grown, it's the greatest among herbs, becometh a tree, a great kingdom, a great territory, that these cosmic beings come down and lodge in the branches thereof. Satan and his minions being enticed to come down to this earth, right, and to lodge in the branches, to make a home, to nest, right, to reproduce. Genesis 6:4. Same thing being told in these other parables, right? Verse 33, another parable spake he unto them, the kingdom of heaven is like unto leaven, same effect, a little speck, yeast, DNA, which a woman took and hid in 3 measures of meal till the whole was leavened. So that's the polluting of the Genesis 6:4 alien Anunnaki DNA, the forbidden DNA coming here. You put one little speck in the meal. What happens to it? Just like I said with the Anunnaki DNA, replicates, spoils the whole thing, right? Till the whole was leavened. Excuse me. Gosh. It's so late. My throat's so dry. Till the whole was leavened. Oh, this is cool. All these things spake Jesus unto the multitude in parables, and without a parable he spake not unto them, that it might be fulfilled which is spoken by the prophet, saying, I will open my mouth in parables, I will utter things which have been kept secret from the foundation of the world. Cool. Oh, wow. Then Jesus sent the multitude away and went into the house, and his disciples came unto him, saying, Declare unto us the parable of the tares of the field. And he answered and said unto them, He that soweth the good seed is the Son of Man. The field is the world. The good seed are the children of the kingdom, but the tares are the children of the wicked one. Man, how more literal could it be with Genesis 6:4? Satan was the one, according to the Babylonian religion, according to the text of Enoch, according to all this stuff. He was the one. Excuse me. Jeez. The enemy that sowed them is the devil. The harvest is the end of the world, and the reapers are the angels. As therefore the tares are gathered and burned in the fire, so shall it be in the end of this world. The Son of Man shall send forth his angels, and they shall gather out of his kingdom all things that offend, and them which do iniquity. And shall cast them into a furnace of fire. There shall be wailing and gnashing of teeth. Check this out. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hidden in a field. Remember? Mustard seed, leaven. You're taking something tiny, putting into something big where it grows. So it's like a little treasure hidden in a field. The which, when a man is found, but this is in a positive sense, it's talking about the kingdom of heaven. It's not talking about it from how Satan perverted it, right? Treasure hidden in a field, The which when a man has found, he hideth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he has, and buyeth that field. Who did that? Stop and think. Deeper level interpretation. That's Jesus. He's talking about himself there, right? Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto treasure hid in a field, the which when a man is found, Jesus being the man, he hideth, and for joy thereof goeth and selleth all that he has, and buyeth that field. When he gave his life, he sold all that he had to buy that field, to get ownership of this earth. There you go. Again, the kingdom of heaven is like unto a merchant man seeking goodly pearls. Because Jesus wanted to save us from the snares of Satan. Satan had polluted the earth. Satan, in Genesis 6:4, lust and interbreeding caused the great flood. Right? It's going to be a repeat at the end of time. Like the days of Noah, right? So, anyways, folks, I thank you all for coming. God bless you all. I should draw a close here. I try not to go over 2 hours on my streams. It's too much for people. Anyways, thank you all for coming. I'll be sure to read all the comments, and I always read all the comments, even from the live streams and stuff, even if they're 2 hours. I do that, and I try to respond to comments, as best I can in the time that I can. So, thank you all for coming. God bless you all. I gotta go. I gotta go sleep. Take care.